Hi, and welcome to the summary presentation of Success Session number 2 for our first year students in the Blue Water Middle College. This session was held in person on Friday, October 6th. So what was covered at this session were, as always, news and announcements. We talked a little bit about early alert grades. We discussed the C and the O sections of the core learning system that you're likely learning about in SD 140 College Success. And then we spent a lot of time on choosing classes for the winter semester, in particular beginning to design your program of study that will hopefully result in you getting the degree that you're pursuing and transferable credits and so on. So we're going to talk about what classes you can take, things to consider when choosing classes, because there's a lot of things to consider. That's what we're going to be covering today. First of all, some important dates, and some of them have passed or are in the process of passing, but just in case we want to review them anyway. Winter courses come out usually about 2 weeks before registration opens, and that was indeed the case. The courses were available, I believe, on October 16th, but they're available now, so you can check to see if the courses that you want are available on the days and times that you want. The registration presentations are underway as I record this. Just a few days ago was Friday, October 20th. We had our first in-person registration process session, and students are required to either attend on October 20th or an upcoming Friday is October 27th. The presentations begin in room 201 of the McKenzie building, where we had the orientation and the other success sessions. So report there. If you did not attend on Friday, October 20th, you must attend on Friday, October 27th. The time on that, let me go back. We have a 1 o'clock session that should end about 2:15, 2:30, and then we have a 3 o'clock session that again should end about 4 o'clock or 4:15. May go as late as 4:30. So winter registration opens on Monday, October 30th. It remains open right on through the first week of class in January, but you definitely don't want to wait that long to register. You want to get it done in the first week, if not the first day or two. We're offering drop-in registration help sessions on the following Fridays after registration opens, November 3rd and Friday, November 10th. You can drop in the Middle College office between 1 and 4. We're not going to schedule any appointments during that time, so we can help students who walk in. This will be for students at any grade level, so it's not just for new students. So keep that in mind. You may have to wait a little bit, but you should get the help that you need when it comes to choosing classes and completing registration. A little bit of information now about Accuplacer testing. You took the Accuplacer last spring prior to enrolling in the Blue Water Middle College. And if your first Accuplacer testing did not place you into English 101 or Math 102, you can retake the Accuplacer at any time now to try to place into them. I should let you know that your SAT scores from your spring 2018 tests can also be used for SC4 course placement, but it can be a good idea to try the Accuplacer at least once before taking the SAT. And in particular, some students are going to do it within the next week or two, so they can possibly use those scores, if they're better, to place into Math 102, possibly Math 110, or English 101. So just keep in mind you can take the Accuplacer. If you have questions about that, contact one of us in the Middle College on how to sign up and practice for the Accuplacer. As I record this now, early alert grades have been available. They are available now. I assume you viewed your grades. If not, you can log into your portal and choose WAVE for college credit students, choose the academic profile section, and then choose view early grades, and you'll see what the instructor posted for you. Now that was back on October 2nd, so those grades are now almost 4 weeks old, so you should really have an updated idea of how you're doing in your classes and not rely solely on the early alert grades. You should see a letter grade for them. It could be anything from A, A minus, B, and so on, or you will see an S or a U. The S stands for satisfactory. The U, of course, unsatisfactory, means they didn't have enough evidence really to give you a specific grade, but it means you really need to look at changing some things, as we'll talk about in a bit, to try to bring that grade up. Now, those were posted in time for you to make a change. There are now about 7 weeks left, 6 or 7 plus finals week, so there's still time to keep working. Usually a good 1/3 of the points in a class are left over the last several weeks, so there's probably a lot of points left still to be gotten at this point. We, our student advisors, Mrs. Barr or Ms. Weimer, emailed students and parents with any student or for any student who had a grade of C- or less in a class, and phone calls were also made when needed to certain students or parents to try to offer help. So that explains that. So what do you do if you're getting a low grade? First of all, you really have to think honestly about what you think is causing the low grade. It may be that you've missed 1, 2, or 3 classes. Missing college classes is serious and can result in, when you hit a certain limit, you fail the class. And so that's something to be aware of. Just because they don't always, take attendance, or you don't get called home if you weren't there, it can be a huge problem if you are not attending classes. And boy, if you've already missed 2 or 3 classes, you need to be at every class through the rest of the semester. You want to think about what you've done so far to improve. So if you had a low grade, or you currently have a low grade, have you done anything different to try to bring that grade up? You can bring it up, but you have to do things differently. Now is not the time to look for an escape hatch or just kind of disappear and stop attending. You want to know what your grade is based on. If you're not clear, ask your instructor. If your instructor's not clear, then come in and talk to one of us. But you need to bring in your syllabus and bring in some of your assignments so we can give you a good, honest look at what we think your grade is based on and how you can bring it up. You want to meet with your instructor during their office hours. Now, in some cases, the instructor's office hours might be in the morning when you're not available due to high school classes. If that's the case, then maybe contact the instructor to see if there's another time they'd be willing to meet, or get there early, way before class starts, or maybe see if you could stay a little later and talk to them for a few minutes. But keep up the communication with your instructor, and if you haven't done a good job of communicating with them, it's not too late in the semester to start building that relationship, and just let them know you really care about your grade and you want to pass the class, and they'll work with you. But you have to come through. If they give you suggestions, you got to take them up on it. Ask for help. Go get help. We've talked about the many different resources for academic support at SC4, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that right now. But keep in mind the Achievement Center, the Writing Center, the Math Center, your instructor, and a good place to start is just come into the Middle College office, email one of us, and just let us know you need help, and then we'll point you in the right direction. And it may just come down to putting in more time. That's what it may take. And you know what, I have students that sometimes say, Mr. Spencer, I just don't have enough time for all this, and I would challenge that. Yes, you do have time. You need to consider that you do not have classes 2 or 3 afternoons per week. You have 4 high school classes, but that still leaves, even coming to college, some open afternoons. And a lot of students, when we interviewed you with your parent about a year ago, we asked how much time do you spend on homework, and a majority of our students reported spending only 30 minutes or less a night, and that was for 6 high school classes. So there is time. You just need to appropriate it and apportion it for college work, and sometimes it's changing what you're doing as well. Some students say, well, my teacher isn't giving us assignments. And I know that sounds crazy, but they're sometimes counting on those little mini assignments to add up the points to keep their grade up. But studying in college, and we've talked about this, is not always about completing assignments. In just a few minutes, I'm going to talk about a little bit about note-taking strategies and organizing notes for studying, and then we're going to talk about studying for tests in a later online success session. Keep in mind, College Success, SD 140, that textbook you have on course, has all kinds of different strategies for taking notes, for reading, for studying for tests. A question to ask yourself is, how many of them are you using? If you're not putting any of those strategies to use and you're just doing the same thing that you've done since 7th or 8th grade when it comes to taking notes or studying, that's probably not going to work and have you succeeding at a high level in college. So flip through those pages at the end of each chapter or the end of the book, and you'll find there's all kinds of dozens and dozens and dozens of strategies for note-taking and studying and so on. So with that in mind, I want to spend just a few minutes on what they call the core learning system, and that's mentioned in the on-course textbook. The C in the core acronym stands for collecting information, and that's really what we do when we go into a class and the teacher is lecturing or playing a video or whatever they might assign a reading or something like that. You're actually collecting the information that first time, and one of the primary ways that we collect information for use later on is by taking notes. Now, how you take notes depends on you, and some students are very neat, very meticulous, and they can get all the information down. It all looks great. Others, as you'll see from me in a little bit, I write a lot, but my handwriting is not crystal clear, and so on. So a lot of it depends on you and how you like to take notes. It can also depend on the course and the instructor. Some courses lend themselves to a lot of vocabulary and or dates, and the instructor sometimes is very good about putting those up on the screen or writing them on the board where you can copy them down. So they make it easy for you to take notes. Other instructors may just sit there and talk about important things, but they don't write or project a lot of that information. So you may have to write things down, a lot of the things that the instructor says, and then go back later and highlight the pieces that are really important. So again, it's not up to the instructor to make it easy for you to take notes. Some do a better job of that than others. The goal of your notes and their importance to your success in the class also can impact how many notes you take and how well you take them. You might find that some courses you can do okay without taking a lot of notes. Maybe the instructor focuses more on the textbook or the reading, or maybe if you just participate in the discussions and really listen and are active participants in the discussion, that prepares you best for whatever their assessment or assignments might be. So initially when you take notes, you're just trying to get it all down, and you can see here this is a copy of notes I took at a meeting. So this was a year or two ago. I believe it was on student financial aid. Yeah, the title says Financial Aid Workshop. One thing you'll notice off to the upper left, it's kind of cut off, but as I always put a date down in terms of when I'm taking notes, and then I'll always head it with where am I at the time. Because sometimes my sheets of paper get separated and they get mixed up on my desk, and at least I know what they're all about. So you can see I jotted things down. I did do a little indenting there, so it's kind of like a real rough outline form, but it is what it is. Now, taking notes, getting that information down, is just the first step in how we gather information from the instructor or the textbook and begin to make it our own in a way that we can later make sense of it and then study it so we can remember it. And ultimately, we either want to remember the information so we can use it in our professional lives, and more often than that, we want to know it and remember it so we can do well on a test, which then translates into a grade in the class and so on. One thing you'll find as you get into classes down the road that really impact what you want to do. So if you're a nursing student, it may be a class in measuring certain drug doses and things like that. Obviously, you want to learn that so you can put it to use. But sometimes if you're taking a history class and you're not going into history, you merely want to learn the information for its own interest's sake, but also so you can do well on the assessment and get a good grade in the class. So the collecting is the initial jotting down notes from a lecture, possibly notes from a textbook, or you're watching a video or something like that. And then you move into the O part of the core learning system, which is the organizing or often rewriting your notes. And that's really what makes them powerful when it comes to studying and learning the information. It's not that initial scribbling them down, but it's rewriting them. Again, organizing your notes, like taking notes, can depend upon the class. I'm going to show you 3 examples that are right out of the SD 140 textbook, just as, again, they're just a few examples of how you can take raw notes and convert them into something that's a little easier for you to study. First of all, if you look at this, it might be a little hard to see if you're viewing this, through the video, but basically it's kind of your classic outline. It doesn't have the Roman numeral 1 and A's and B's and 1's and 2's like you might have learned about outlines in middle school or high school. But basically it's that idea where there's a main topic and then you indent a little bit more for subtopics, and then you indent a little bit more, such as right up here when you get to examples and even less important topics. But it's not likely that this person would have written these notes exactly like this as the instructor was talking, unless you've got one of those instructors that actually projects their notes in a nice outline form. And some instructors do. Sometimes you get lucky and basically you just copy down what they have on there, and you've got a good set of notes to study from. But that's it. You've got the classic outline. Here's another way of organizing your notes. And again, this information is the same information that was in the outline we just saw, but it's now in what's called a concept map, where it takes this information about Abraham Maslow, who was one of the founding fathers, as it says here, of humanistic psychology. So he's one of the big names in the study of psychology. But it takes those sections and does it a little more, separates them more graphically. And sometimes some students, this really helps them when studying. And again, it depends on how your teacher assesses as well. If you have already seen that your instructor, whether it's Sigmund Freud or Abraham Maslow or someone else in the field of psychology, if they always want to know some background of the individual, where they grew up, how they grew up, what are their main theories, and so on, you might take each person and create a concept map based on information about that person. You could use a concept map for something in biology. Maybe you in the center you've got animal cell, and then each of the outer cells have to do with the function of an animal cell, the structure of an animal cell, and so on, and then you just keep breaking it down. So a concept map is another way of taking your notes and then reorganizing. It's very rare that someone would actually take notes in a concept map format. And then finally, again, these are not raw notes. When you look at this is something that a person has rewritten, and they spent time on this. But when you spend time just rewriting your notes, that's study time. And so you're going to get to know the information better. Even if you never got back to this, just the fact that you created it is going to help you when it comes to sharing the information on a test or a quiz. So this is called Cornell Notes. It's described in your SD 140 book. Again, this is a way of refining and rewriting your notes. Again, same information. It's about Abraham Maslow. The big column to the right is where basically it's your refined notes. It's kind of like that outline that we showed earlier. The big difference is you've got about a third of your page on the left side where you're actually asking yourself a question related to the information to the right of it. So this is a good way for studying. If you look at that, I don't know if you can read it, but it says that first question over here on the left is, what was the psychological movement that Maslow led? When did he become leader of this movement? So then when you're studying, you've got some questions that the instructor may ask. These might be right off of a study guide. The answer is just to the right. And then there's a section at the bottom where you're just kind of summing up. You're writing a summary of what was above. You're not rewriting it all, but you're kind of summing it up. And just that process is a good way of organizing your notes for studying. And so we'll talk more about that at a later session. So it's important to consider how to match the notes format with what you're learning. Whatever format you choose, spend time organizing the notes you take to make them more effective for studying. Again, taking notes one time and then just studying them the night before the exam is probably not what's going to work really well for you. Rewrite them. I know that takes time, but that's actually study time. That's going to help you. It's just as if you're sitting there trying to memorize it. When you rewrite, you're thinking through it. Okay, I'm going to pause right now, and then we'll come back and we'll start talking about choosing classes for the winter semester and to complete your degree.